Joe, Colorado versus Texas Tech. Texas Tech coming off an emotional win versus Iowa State. Colorado coming off a bye week. How do you see this one playing out?
Any lazy Colorado hater is going to try to point to Texas Tech's performance last week and use that as reasoning why they think that they're going to beat Colorado. Man, there is so much wrong with trying to use their win over Iowa State as a reason why they could beat Colorado. This Texas Tech defense is not built, Blake, to keep up with this extremely dominant extremely dominant Colorado offense. Colorado has been truly hitting their stride over this stretch where they have built up this 6-2 record. Even in their loss against Kansas State, they had a very good offensive output. So far this season, Texas Tech, look, we're very big fans of Taj Brooks. We're very big fans of the performance of that offense at times. Again, specifically Taj Brooks, we really like him. But this defense so far this year, 154 rush yards per game allowed, 307.2 pass yards per game allowed. I think one of the most important pieces for Colorado in this game, Isaiah Augusta has been turning into more and more of a key piece in this offense. And I talked about him a couple of times this year as a bright spot for a team that's trying to figure out how they can produce yards on the ground. He keeps being a reliable source. Last game against Cincinnati, he started to get more carries. I believe he had 22 carries and 91 yards. His role is increasing, and I think that this could be a game where he has a breakout among all of the other offensive stars that Colorado has. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anyone saying that Texas Tech is going to win this football game. Colorado has too much juice, too much firepower for this Texas Tech defense to really do anything.
Well, they better find a run game because, look, a lot of people are here's the ironic thing very quickly. You're talking about the run game in Colorado that I think is pretty funny. They were 132nd last year in rushing yards, okay? They're 129th right now. So I know
that's
you
an improvement. That's an improvement. Okay, all right, sorry.
Stop.
Look, but wait, hold on. But they're getting
better. No one can disagree.
In the middle of the season, they've been getting better. At the start of the season, it was bad.
As if that the game before was an outlier. Let's call it what it is. You're still 129th in the country in rushing yards. Now, for this game specifically, to your point, Texas Tech is 132nd in the country in passing defense. They are ass in their secondary. Play your game. Shedeur Sanders, wideouts, O-line. You know what the game plan is? Throw the football. This is a bad matchup for Texas Tech, Joe. Very bad. Because ironically, I think this is the best overall offense that you've seen. There's no offense that has more weapons than Colorado that you've played this year. None. And this is a bad matchup for you. Look, you better go. All the things that Texas Tech is doing philosophy-wise has to change this week if they have a chance. They got to go after Shedeur Sanders. I know you don't like going after the quarterback. You want to play soft coverage, whatever. You better get after him because it's not going to matter, Joe.
I don't think they have the bodies to do that, though. They're producing. They've only had 11 sacks this year. They're one of the worst teams getting after the quarterback.
That's why I'm saying you got to go after him because if you're still giving up yardage, it doesn't matter. Joe, if you're still going to give up the yards, why don't you try something differently? Why? You're banging your head up against the wall every single week by dropping dudes in coverage, and you're 132nd in passing yards allowed. Joe, think about this. They are a half a yard away from being the worst secondary in the country. A half a yard. Yeah. So spare me on this whole notion that you can't try to – what do we see teams that give Colorado problems? What do they all do? They get after Shedeur Sanders. That's the philosophy. They're not going to do it. To your point, though, they're not going to do that. They're not going to change. I mean, why would they change now? If they want to keep it close, if you're going to give them up anyway, might as well give up the yards by getting quarterback hits and pressures. Make Sanders beat you by making great decisions, which he's been doing all year. But the bottom line is you better play keep away. You better play keep away if you're Texas Tech. You better run the ball as effectively as you've done all year. Now, when you look at their rushing offense, Joe, even though Taj Brooks has been great, they're 129th in rushing yards. So they have one of the best backs in the Big 12, and they're not giving him the football enough. So everything philosophy-wise, we talk about styles make fights. It's kind of been the theme of this extra pod here. My God, I think Texas Tech's about to get roasted. But two things can be true at once. Even though that you've been very bad, how do teams react after emotional wins? Either they're going to come out and fall flat on their face like we saw A&M do last week against South Carolina, or it's a momentum builder like we see or what we think we have been seeing against South Carolina or with South Carolina. So I think that Colorado, though, for what it's worth, there's just too much talent offensively and out wide. I think that this is a bad matchup, and you better play keep away and change some things philosophically, defensively. You're Texas Tech, or you're going to get hammered.
So I mentioned this earlier. For the teams that have gotten upset so far this year, there's been a weakness that was a really bad matchup for their opponent. So in this situation, like what we're talking about here with Texas Tech in the game that they had last week against Iowa State, they took advantage of an offense for Iowa State that was good through the air, but was inconsistent, and they weren't able to get and produce the same level of chunk plays that they've had, and they've been kind of living and dying off of big plays from Higgins and Noel, and those plays weren't produced when they needed them. Their defense also played very, very poorly. Their run defense did not show up. Colorado does not have their weaknesses aligning with what Texas Tech does well. It doesn't. There is no reason in my eyes to believe that Texas Tech wins this football game. I think Colorado without a doubt has it.
The only thing that they can do, meaning Texas Tech, they're 8th in the country in passing offense. You're going to have to change things philosophy for yourself defensively to try to get after Sanders, or here's your only other option. You better win a shootout.
Like the two losses that Colorado has had this year has been against Kansas State and has been against Nebraska, who played the run game, played time of possession, and tried to completely eliminate and get after Shedeur Sanders. Negative 29 rushing yards for Colorado in that game against Kansas State. So if they want to win the game, I would argue they got to play keep away. They got to do what Nebraska and what Kansas State did.
Thank you for taking the take I just had. So you interrupt me to agree with what I said earlier, that you better play keep away. The bottom line, though, is I don't agree with you that they can't get in a shootout with them. I mean, Joe, they're 8th in the country in passing yards. They can throw the ball around. And by the way, Colorado has not seen an offense that can throw the ball around like this outside of, what was it, Arizona, maybe. I mean, Texas Tech is not. I mean,
and then they shut down Arizona. Arizona couldn't move the ball on them.
Right. And I mean, you had Fafita, and then you had a tomato can at the other wideout. I'm not saying there's ways that Texas Tech can stay around in this one. And look, Colorado's coming off a bye. How does Deion get his team up? So again, it's just a bad matchup for Texas Tech. You're going to have to come up with some creative ways to win this one, but I'm going to take Colorado to win. And listen, the final thing here that I'd say about Colorado, you win this one, Joe. I mean, I don't know if you're not looking at playoff berth in the face if you win out. I mean, you could look at a playoff berth in the face. I mean, you got one Big 12 loss, and I don't know if Kansas State is going to – I think Kansas State might slip up again. I mean, that's just where it's at.
It's 100% on the table.
So we'll see, man. But I'm going to take Colorado to win here. I just don't think Texas Tech is built enough to beat them.
No.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.